I think about life and especially creativity in four distinct phases. I've had this idea for quite some time. I want to share it. But essentially, I think life and a lot of things follow this cycle of phases, right? Think about it like this, right? The cycle of life. You're born, you grow, you reproduce, and then you die. Maybe there's not a cycle part there. But with a lot of things, right, the process of doing something is you enter it, then you enter a phase of growing, then you enter a phase of contribution, of creation, and then you enter a phase of like exiting, of moving on to the next opportunity, of entering a new world. So I kind of want to talk about how I view this in the realm of creativity and in life in general, and how I think it's important to recognize where you are in the cycle, so that you're doing the right thing to move to the next phase in the cycle, whether that be on a macro life level or just a micro level. For example, right, with this skill of creating content, I want to recognize where I'm at in the cycle. I'm not just entering, I'm kind of in the growth phase. I'm in the skill acquisition phase, so that at some point down the line, when I master this skill, I'm able to give my own contribution. So I want to talk about that. But the idea is you can apply this to something as small as your creative endeavor or something as large as your life. But the idea is you want to recognize what phase you're in. So again, to break it down, if you had to think about it like this, it's like birth, growth, reproduction, death, if we're thinking about it, life. But when it comes to creativity, right, it's entering an opportunity or entering a new world. Seeing the opportunities, having new ideas, being exposed to new things, that is characterized as the first phase of the cycle. The second phase of the cycle is growing, getting better at the skill. If you're a sports player, this is practice, right? Moving on to the third level is where you've gained a level of mastery from the growth, so that you're now able to contribute, create, bring new things into the field, into whatever it is that you're doing. And then phase four is when you've you've grandfathered yourself out of that creative phase and you're moving on to another opportunity. So this is like the exit. This is the retirement of the athlete, right? Pretty much everything follows this cycle. And so it's important to recognize where you're at, right? So if you're new in whatever it is that you're doing, you want to recognize that. You want to say, well, if I am in the birth stage of this opportunity, what's the best thing for me to be doing? I've taken some time, like I've thought about this stuff. I just feel like if you're entering an opportunity, there's different things that you should be doing than if you're already a pro at the opportunity, right? That's a fairly obvious thing. When it comes to the specifics, right? If you've just entered an opportunity, you want to explore, you want to try out new things, look for new ideas. Like if you're entering a new sport, what you want to do is you want to try different training methods. You want to try different practice routines, different schedules, different diets, figure out the right thing for you so that you can move on to the growth phase as fast as possible. That's what I would say characterizes the first phase, is how quickly can you choose something to pursue in the growth phase. Because the growth phase is where you really commit to getting better at a certain skill. The only way that you're able to create, the only way you're able to get good enough at something to create is to go through a growth phase. You have to be willing to learn the fundamentals. You have to be willing to learn the basics. You have to be willing to learn the area that you're creating in order to create, right? So think about this. I've said this a couple times on the channel, but to create means to bring something new into the world, right? You can't do that unless you know the world that you're bringing something new into. You have to be aware enough to know that the domain that you're operating in, like where the boundaries are. For example, right? Let's say you're playing sports, because it's an easy example. I want to keep using it. You're playing basketball, right? To create, to bring new things into the sport of basketball, you have to first know the fundamentals. You have to know how to dribble with your right hand and your left hand. Then you can start to do cool combinations, right? Very simple. But it's the same in writing, in art, in business. If you're building a business, you have to learn the basics. You have to copy what other people are doing. You have to learn the fundamentals so that you can add your own levels on top of that. So in this phase of growth, of learning the fundamentals, I would say if the first phase was characterized by curiosity, the second phase is characterized by obsession. You want to be obsessed with getting better at the skill. Again, back to what I was saying in the beginning, right now I am in that phase in creating content. I want to get better. I want to focus on the small little details. I want to be obsessed with getting better at the actual skill so that I can, again, speed up this process and get into the creative phase as fast as possible. I want to bring new things to this world of content creation, but I can't do that until I know the world itself, right? So I am in this phase right now in content creation. But if I look back at my life, in the phase of business and running a marketing agency, I was recently here, but I quickly exited and went to a new opportunity. So I would say, like, in a lot of ways, it kind of depends where you're at in the cycle, like what you should be focusing on. If you're in the creative phase, you just want to be contributing to the world. You want to be bringing your ideas that you've developed from the obsession here, the ideas that you've gotten from your obsession. You want to, in this phase, you want to give them to the world. Like, you want to bring the new things that you have in your head into the world. I would say, like, where most people get caught, right? At the beginning, they get caught in picking something. Like, they don't know what to pick. Here, they get caught in just obsessing over obsession. Like, at some point, you're good enough at the skill to bring new things into the world. But some people get caught in this phase of just getting better and better and better and better and not trying anything new. In a lot of ways, bringing new things is the only way to get better. I would say for an NBA basketball player, right? There was a point in time where they knew how to do the things and they had to, like, step out of their comfort zone, step out of what they knew to grow. And that is their creative phase, right? That is trying new things. That's going for a left-handed dunk when someone's blocking their right hand or whatever. The idea is you always want to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. Cliche, like Instagram quote type thing. But the reality is, in the creative cycle, it's very easy to get caught in just doing the reps of getting better and not actually pushing yourself out into an uncomfortable situation of trying new things. So that's what I would say would characterize the third phase, right? Is bringing new things into the world, putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation, trying to bring your vision, your ideas into the world, which is a hard thing to do, which is why you want to have skills from phase 2 and you want to have picked the right opportunity from phase 1. Now, the last stage, which I would kind of characterize as retirement, death in the cycle of life, but in reality, it's moving on to a new opportunity. At a certain point in time, you have created enough to know that you want to move on to something new. And that might be just the next level in the certain thing that you're doing, right? Phase 4 might just be moving up to the next league in the sport, or moving into the next form of art, or taking your music or your painting more seriously. But the idea is, in phase 4, that is characterized by reflection. Think about, like, the old retired person, right? What is the ideal there? Well, they're reflecting on what they've done. They're taking what they've learned and they're using it in their next opportunity. That's what characterizes phase 4, is reflection. But it's also moving on to the next opportunity, right? So it's twofold. You can't just sit in phase 4 reflecting on what you've done, not doing anything new. You also have to move on to something, right? And that's the hardest part of whatever it is. For me, I went through a massive cycle in business of running an SMMA, a social media marketing agency. And I chose the opportunity. I did all the hard work to learn the skill. It got to the point where I was finally entering the creative phase. And at that point, I knew that it wasn't the right opportunity. So I had to enter phase 4. And what I would say was the biggest thing here was realizing that the speed in which you move on to the next opportunity is the most important thing. Speed is a force. Speed leads to action. So in a lot of cases, like when you're stuck in phase 4, when you're stuck at the end of an opportunity, the best thing that you can do is enter phase 1 as quickly as possible. Shut out everything, move on as quickly as possible. It's like a cliche with relationships, right? If you know they're not the right person, then move on as fast as you can. I really can't say from experience because I've never been in a relationship. But the idea is that's like standard relationship advice. What I can say though is for me, when I was moving on from my marketing agency, the hardest part was here from phase 4 to phase 1. What's the next opportunity? What's the new thing? What am I going to try next? That was the hardest part because you don't know, right? You're starting a new phase in the cycle. These phases are kind of similar, right? Like they're known, they're more certain. From 4 to 1 is where the uncertainty comes. Like you don't know what is next. And so I like to think about this in a lot of ways, right? Like think about the grand scheme of life. Do you really know what's next after phase 4? Everyone likes to think they do. I would say I have confidence, but there's more uncertainty there, right? I would say that this cycle of creativity, of cycle of life applies to almost anything that you're trying to get better at, that you're trying to improve upon, that you're trying to dedicate energy to. So this is just an idea that I've had for a long time. I'm not sure if I articulated it well, but I kind of just wanted to talk about what I felt was, the universal cycle of things and how at some point you enter something, you're the child, you're the newborn that has this new world they're opened up to. Then you become the adolescent, you gain skills, you grow to the point where you can now create things, reproduce, or whatever it is, right? And then you go to phase 4 where you've now left that creative phase and you're moving on to a new opportunity. I think it's kind of a universal cycle. And I kind of just wanted to share the idea. If this kind of stuff interests you, creativity, creative inspiration, that kind of stuff, I consider sticking around on this channel. It's what I want to share. It's the ideas that I feel so passionate about. And so if this is something that interests you, please consider subscribing. I'm also going to leave my Instagram in the description, as well as my own creative endeavor, Art District. So you can check those out if you are interested. But yeah, I appreciate you sticking around and hopefully getting some of what I was talking about. If you had any questions, please leave them in the comments. But the idea is, this is the cycle of everything, of creativity, of life, of whatever it is that you're doing. Where are you in the cycle? Are you at the end of the cycle? Are you in the middle of the cycle creating and bringing new things to it? Are you at the beginning? Are you exploring? Are you curious? Figure out where you're at and do the optimal strategy. If you're in the beginning, then you should be exploring. If you're in the second phase, you should be obsessed about getting skills. If you're in the third phase, you should be creating, bringing new things into the world. If you're in phase 4, you should be reflecting and moving on to the next opportunity as fast as possible. Hopefully that explains it. But yeah, I appreciate you sticking around and hearing me yap a little bit. So thank you. See you on the next one.